الزملاء الأعزاء، نواصل فقرات الملتقى الثالث للموارد البشرية للعام الجاري 2022، ونتابع في الدقائق التالية عرض تقديمي حول التحول الرقمي لعملية إدارة المواهب، يقدمها السيد دايفيد ادواردز رئيس إدارة المواهب في شركة SHL، فليتفضل مشكورا.
Good morning, everybody. My name is David. It was in Arabic, and I'm learning Arabic shway shway, so I'm not exactly sure what was said, but I'm sure it was something about the fact I'm a psychologist and a talent management specialist. I'll leave it at that. Today, I'm going to talk about the digitization of talent management, but because I'm a psychologist, I'm doing it from the track of talent management, not the technology, because I still believe that the technology is an aid to talent management. It doesn't replace the human touch. I think that was touched on in the last presentation as well, that you still have to have human oversight of anything, because they're not going to replace humans with artificial intelligence. It's going to be a nice aid. That's my take on it anyway. Just a little bit about SHL. We're the largest talent insight company in the world. We work with many different organizations. I'm not going to say anything more than that because I'm not here to sell anything. I'm here to talk about talent and digitization of talent management. But we do work around the entire talent management cycle. And the reason I'm saying that is because I will touch on information and concepts and different things that look at talent management and the entire talent management cycle itself. Okay. We have won some awards for our digitization. We've won awards for virtual assessment centers and implementing virtual assessment centers. That was just becoming much more popular during the pandemic, where people were panicking about how do we assess people while they're sat at home. Well, virtual assessment centers, virtual technologies to allow you to assess important criteria that link to talent management. We've won awards for all these types of things, and our models as well, our models of leadership. And I'm going to show you some of them. I'm showing you them as concepts. Again, I'm not trying to sell anything. I do say that a few times. I'm trying to show you how you can approach talent management, how you have to be really careful that the talent management is the most important thing, and the technology aids you in applying talent management. That's the key thing from my side. So I'm going to talk first about why it's important, digitization of talent management and talent management itself, and what CROs around the world have decided is really important going forwards for organizations to make sure they can achieve their objectives. And we're going to talk about all the different types of models of talent. What is talent? Many different organizations have many different takes on what talent is. There's even research to suggest that the same organizations have totally different talent models in different parts of the business, which causes all sorts of issues for organizations. So we'll talk about what talent is first, because don't forget, the technology is only as good as the data you put in it. Again, that was the same message, I think, from the previous presentation. You've probably heard of garbage in, garbage out. So you need to know what talent looks like, what good looks like, before you go to the technology, because the model of talent, the model of high potential people needs to be embedded in the technology. We'll also take a look at briefly artificial intelligence. I'm not going to go into the same sort of detail as the previous speaker, but I'm going to focus in on artificial intelligence and how you can use it to assess people and assess your talent in the organization in a best practice way. Finally, really important thing is once you have all this data about people, what do you do with it? You've probably heard of big data. It's starting. There's now talks about people analytics. The data is only as good as the way you interpret it. And do you know what you're looking for in the first place? So we'll talk about how you use this data to make really important decisions. And don't forget, talent management affects people's lives. So you have to get it right, and you have to use the right techniques, because you're making decisions about people's livelihoods and their jobs and their careers. So you have to make sure everything is valid, fair, and technology really helps you do that, as long as the fundamental talent management processes are sound. We'll leave questions to the end. I usually like people firing questions at me, but we'll leave those to the end. So we're all in what's called the fourth industrial revolution now. There's the internet of everything. You're all on your smartphones all the time, going through the internet, even when you're sat at your tables. That's not a problem. I'm used to that. But you can see that people now use technology in many different ways. And so obviously, talent management has to cope with people's expectations of what technology is used for and how it's used now. The young generations, I can never keep up with what they call the new generations because I'm quite old, they expect to be able to be tested using the latest technologies potentially just on their mobile phones. They don't want to be hassled with having to sit even at a computer now. So you have to consider that there's a reliance on technology, and if actually, there was an article recently to suggest that if anyone cut the internet connection, the undersea lines for internet connection, our entire civilization would fall apart because we're all so reliant on technology now. So technology is a very useful tool to help you make your talent management processes more efficient and cost-effective. Now, these are the priorities HR Crows decided were really important in 2021. I'm showing you that because they do sort of resonate with what's coming next. So employee and candidate experience has been found to be very important, not just when they're with you in the role, but actually when they're applying for roles. Candidates expect to have an engaging experience because they believe that the way you try to recruit them is actually a reflection on how you're going to treat them. So you have to make sure they have an engaging experience if you're trying to recruit external staff. And of course, you have to keep and maintain the engagement levels of your people inside the organization, because the research clearly shows that engagement links to performance, and talent management links to people being engaged. So these things all interlink. Also, people analytics again. Data is really important, but the right sort of data. This is continued into 2022. If you look at some of the key Crow investments for 2022, it's data and analytics, recruitment, employee engagement, well-being, wellness, compensation. So these are all, again, linked to HR and talent management processes. And you can see how it's very much linked to technology again. Wanted to make things more effective, more cost-effective, more time-efficient, but still valid and predictive. There's quite a bit of work to do because actually the talent landscape at the moment is quite, well, it's not all bad news, but it's pretty bad. 25% of people in 2021 quit their jobs. So that'll be quite a challenge for organizations. Remote working. Most people here were remote working up until recently. You're probably back in your offices now. But can I have a quick show of hands? Who still wants to remote work if they were given the option? Oh, only small numbers? Well, actually, in some countries, candidates won't even apply for a job now unless they know they can remote work. So remote working is becoming very important as a type of work or a type of way of engaging with the organization. And the war of talent is still very tricky. So Crows have said, HR departments say that the war on talent is as tricky as ever, trying to find the right talent to fill the really critical roles in the organization. Maybe that resonates with some people here that recruit. Interestingly, the data on digital transformation in organizations suggests very few companies are successful. So from 2019, $1.7 trillion was spent by organizations on digital transformation. And 50% of them said it was a clear failure. It wasn't effective. 50% of organizations didn't work. 16% mixed results, 34% there was success. They tried to find out what was the key thing, the key X factor that made things more likely to be successful. And it was the people, not technology. If you don't have the right people in place for the digital transformation, it's not going to be effective. So again, technology is useful, but human beings are much more useful. That's my take. I'm biased because I'm a psychologist, but it's always going to be true. So you need to have the right people in place at the right time to deliver on the objectives of the organization. So what is integrated talent management? I'm just going to do something about talent management here before we leap into how technology can help it, because you do have to have the fundamentals. If you don't know what you're looking for, if you don't know what your objectives are for your talent management processes, the technology is not going to help you. If you don't put the right data into AI, for instance, it's not going to give you the right answers. The last speaker said hopefully the same sort of thing. You can correct me if I'm wrong later. So what is integrated talent management? Well, the very first thing is you need to have the strategy. What is the strategy for your talent management? What do you need, what do you want to do? What do you want the objective to be? Because that will determine exactly what success looks like, and that will actually affect the talent models you have in the organization. What does good look like? Because you have to embed that into your technology. If you want your technology to tell you who's the best fit for a role, you have to tell it first what good looks like for that role. Otherwise, it's not going to give you those answers. Does that make sense? So first of all, you have to decide what is talent in our organization. And by the way, one size doesn't fit all. Many of my clients say, can you tell me what that organization does because they're like us and I'll do the same thing? Do you think that's a good idea, though? There are they're called mimetic pressures to just do what everyone else is doing. Well, actually, the research suggests maybe you've got a unique organization with an organizational culture where maybe you need to do things a little bit differently from others. So you need to take into account all those sort of factors too. Once you have, it sounds simple, once you have the talent model in place, then you can start looking at the activities of talent management, attraction and selection, development, performance management, et cetera, But those activities, that's where you can see where the technology can help you. How do you recruit people when you've got 5,000 applicants? Well, technology can help you there if you use the right technology and use the right criteria. How do you develop people? So many people in the right way. Technology can help you there too, obviously. So clearly, these activities have always been needed, but the technology now helps it become more cost-effective, time-effective, and hopefully more effective over time, and there's an ROI for you. Of course, for all this to happen, you have to have ways of measuring your talent to see if they fit the talent models, and I'm going to come onto that shortly as well. Hopefully this makes sense, because the next slide is going to freak you out. This is how all the different parts of a talent management process link together. The ones in the same colors tend to occur at the same time and are most closely associated, but there's other activities around the organization where they have to have the data. They have to have the same data as you because they need it to make different types of decisions. So integrated talent management is tough, and that's probably why people bring in experts to do it for them, or at least advise them on it, because it's tough. But you can see how technology can really help in this need to be interconnected, because technology is pretty good at that. Hopefully that makes sense as well. So I suppose the message is talent management is tough. Technology can help you make it at least more effective and maybe reduce some of the mundane work, the things that you don't have to do now because the technology can do that for you, leaving you to make the strategic decisions. Inshallah. Is that the right place to put it? These are some of the benefits of an integrated talent management system. Allows you to work with evidence-based process. If you use an integrated talent management process and use the right sorts of technology, you can reduce bias. The Amazon example was quite nice earlier. That was because they didn't code the bias out of the AI. AI didn't want to be discriminative. It didn't know it was. It just happened because the algorithm let it do those things, right? It doesn't have any feelings. There's no AI yet that passes a Turing test, unless you want to tell me otherwise, of course. So essentially, it helps you be more effective and also allows you to use evidence, reduces bias, less of the old school tie, as we call it in Britain. You might call it WASTA. It reduces any of that process, okay? There's other things too about you can embed your values into the talent management process by embedding the behaviors that link to your values. You can respond quickly to business needs, because many a time recruiters or even internal talent management specialists might be asked, which of these 50 people in the organization would be a best fit to this leadership role? Then you have to run around looking for competency scores and realize they've all pretty much got the same competency scores, so what are we going to do? So good talent management with good models, considering the contextual challenges, I'll come back to that, really help increase the validity of your talent management processes. And this is what we do at my organization. We help digitize many of the mundane parts, or the parts that really require technology. And you can do this. You don't have to use us. I'm not trying to sell again. But you can do this to be effective and make your talent management processes work for you. So what sort of strategy should you have? Here's some examples of questions that you might be asked. How can I better align my workforce? Who's likely to be a best fit to a particularly critical leadership role? All these types of questions require you to have the strategy in place. What do you want your talent management processes to actually tell you? You need to talk to your leaders about what they really need from the talent in the business so they can achieve their objectives. And that should be embedded in your talent management strategies and the talent models you include. What is talent? What is talent? It's very difficult to say. Everyone has a different definition, and even some companies, as I said, have different definitions within the definition. What time did I start, actually? It's almost 11:30. It can't be half an hour gone already. Anyway, so I've always thought being an astronaut, I've always wanted to be one until I realized I had to strap myself to a rocket. He's a very brave guy. But what is talent? You could want a high potential talent model that identifies people who may be successful in the near future, having the right attributes. You can encode those into your talent management processes and, of course, then encode them into any digitized processes as well. What is good? What's a high potential? I'm showing you examples of our models. You don't necessarily have to follow our models, but these are some tried and tested models. You're probably used to competencies in the organization. You have your own competency model. Fantastic. It explains what type of leadership behaviors you'd want in the organization, and then you can start looking at whether people have those behaviors. Now, there's criticisms of competencies, and that one of them is they're static. So essentially, you're looking at everybody with the same lens. You're deciding that everyone needs to have the same behaviors for any leadership role, irrespective of the role. Now, they're still useful. You can develop people around them and make sure they have the right behaviors to be leaders. But once you are asked the question, which of these people is better for the VP role of, the competency models sort of fall down because you've developed everyone to be the same. So which one of them is better for that role? And that's where context is critical. So again, very useful. Most talent management processes embed competencies. But you should start looking potentially at context as well. Our research into leadership suggests that when you look at leaders and their roles and how effective they are, context is really critical. What are they supposed to do? So you as a leader, what do you have to do? The VP of the different department, have they got exactly the same challenges as you? Very unlikely. So it means you might have to have a different leader. So you might have to look at different challenges within different parts of the organization. So you might need different leaders. That means, of course, you need to assess people in different ways. Technology can help there because it's very difficult to do that without effective technology, where you can look at people and look at different people in different ways for any particular role. So context is critical. What you need people to do, and that needs to be embedded within your digitized processes too. You need a way of flexing. You don't want a one-size-fits-all for everybody. What about digital transformation? I mentioned earlier that people often are not ready for it, and digital transformation fails. Well, we've looked at how you actually look at digital transformation, and we've identified certain things that human beings need to be adept at to be useful in digitally transformed organizations. They need to be continuously learning and innovating. They need to be able to analyze things effectively. They need to be able to still execute their roles and plan well and drive to results. These are the types of behaviors you'd expect in a digitally transformed organization. And we have digital readiness models that you can use within organizations. Again, this is our model. But again, it's about embedding what good looks like and what you need from people within your talent management processes. So if you're going to digitize that, that needs to be embedded into the technology. The technology needs to know, what am I looking for? What's good look like? So they can go looking in your data bank to see the people in the organization that can do it. I'm talking quite quickly. I'm hoping that makes sense. If you want to work from home, you may need to think about the types of behaviors that will make people more effective at working from home. Some people won't work well at home at all because they don't have that drive of being with people. They may just sit and watch the soaps all day. Not very effective. But other people may be very adept at working from home. Again, you can have models of talent that tell you what good looks like for remote working. I've shown you all of those purely because it shows that there's a very diverse way of looking at talent. You can use competencies, but they often are static. They may not be as flexible. You can look at context and profile people against roles, or you can look at what it is you want them to be good at in the organization. Do you need them to be adept at digital things and use a different type of talent model? The beauty, though, of technology is you can reuse talent data. And that's what we really tell clients to do now. Once you've assessed somebody, why are you then not using that data in different ways? Only once, and then you discard the data. No, keep the data. You can recalibrate it against all these different things you want from them to see if they fit those particular roles or those particular attributes. So it's reuse of data is becoming very important. If you've got data that's 18 months valid, why would you not reuse that data when you're looking at them again for different things? Does that make sense? Lots of organizations don't do that. Talent assessments. Candidates now want a mobilized type of assessment. They want to be able to do this on their smartphone. Oh, I'm going to do an ability test. Let me do that on my smartphone. Personality profile. All these things can be digitized. And the beauty of it is it makes them even more valid and even more predictive, and it allows them to have an engaging process too. Candidates want an engaging way of interacting with the process now. So when you're recruiting, try to make sure they get some sort of realistic job preview, an immersive experience of how they're going to be recruited into this awesome organization. You need to engage them, but you still need to use assessments that are valid and reliable, and you can rely on the data for your processes. And of course, you need to have reliable data to screen people out in large numbers too. Again, all these talent management processes, many of these things can be really efficiently embedded in a digital way into your processes. You can look at immersive, does it work? Oh, it's a PDF, she should be talking to you. You can actually have immersive experiences. So there could be a journey through the recruitment process, not just tests, but ways of you telling them. Your CEO could be there telling them about your organization, your culture, why they should come and work for you before they go in to do any tests. So it's more of an experience rather than an assessment. Candidates expect to almost be wooed now. They've got all the power now, candidates typically, because they won't come to work for you unless there's something in it for them. Also, the types of technology in terms of assessments. You've all probably seen ability tests. Well, these are different. These are semi-gamified, where you have to interact with the question on the screen, and they're mobile-enabled. They're literally doing ability tests at the touch of a button, and they're engaging with the questions. The reason for that being so useful is because the technology allows it to be harder to fake good or cheat. Because if they're interacting with the question, not just choosing an answer, how do they interact in the right way? It means that we have larger banks of questions in that particular assessment. So it's harder to cheat because they're not going to get the same questions as everyone else. So these are ways that without the technology, these things wouldn't be available. That would be the same for personality profiles, for motivational types of assessments. All can be mobile-enabled, all can be engaging to complete now. When it comes to virtual assessment centers, again, they can be virtualized so that people don't have to leave their rooms. They don't have to leave their houses. They can actually do the assessment center in their own homes. It actually means that you can widen your net for talent. If you really wanted to interview somebody, but they're on the other side of the world, you'd usually had to fly them in and then assess them. Not anymore. Many a time I've delivered assessment centers to someone sat in New York. Time difference is a bit of a struggle, but actually you can still do the assessment center virtually from your home. And you can get data that help you make the decision, and saving on costs, saving on time. So the technology enables you to run a really reliable and valid talent management process. It doesn't change things, though, in terms of you still need human oversight over the decisions. So I'm going to go through this one fairly smartly because you had a presentation about artificial intelligence previously, but I'm really going to focus here on the assessment part of it. So at SHL, we believe that AI has a huge potential for improving of assessment. It can improve the reliability and the validity if used in the right way. But it's not without risk, as actually the previous speaker mentioned too. So you have to use it in the right way, otherwise it can actually do damage, and it can make decisions incorrect. Data is king again, and again, that's another point the previous speaker made. Now, SHL has some core principles and ethics when embedding AI into any of our assessments, and I'll come back to that shortly. But these are the benefits of AI if you used correctly within talent assessments. It can enhance the validity. It can enhance the predictive power of any assessment so that the best person, it shows you them, and they actually do then have the best performance. It can reduce bias. if the AI is designed in the right way, it can actually reduce the bias of any decision. There won't be any human error or any human bias within that particular data. The scoring can be more improved and error-free. And you can use natural response formats. So you can literally talk to the machine, and it will actually assess your speech, for instance, your effectiveness at speaking. That's one assessment I'm going to show you just a screen of in a second. You can literally assess people's speech and in terms of spoken or written very effectively with AI, with short tests that are very valid and give the same ratings that subject matter experts might give. And you're using natural response formats for that. It can increase the fidelity of an assessment. You can actually create simulations that are very, very similar to the job they're going to apply for. And the AI can score them against certain criteria. But again, the data is really important. You have to have enough data in any AI for it to be an accurate and valid procedure. Better candidate experience, of course. If it's more highly valid, it's also a better experience. Plus, of course, it's likely to get the better person for you. Now, there are some principles to think about, though. AI is still an assessment. It still has to have rigorous reliability and validity. So psychometrics have been around for 140 years and have been rigorously analyzed for their validity over that time. We shouldn't lower the benchmark for AI. It still needs to show you that it's predictive. It does get you the best person. It doesn't have any discriminatory aspects to it, and it's reliable. So if someone does the test again and again, they're going to get the same score again and again. It really has to still have those properties. Also, it should be explainable. You might have heard of AI that when they've asked them, how did it arrive at that particular conclusion? Oh, we don't really know, it just computer says yes. That's not acceptable. For any assessment, you need to know how the AI came to that score, because if I was feeding back to one of you saying you didn't get the job, I'm afraid, and you said why, computer said no, why did it say no? I don't know, it just said no. How acceptable would that be to you? Not acceptable at all. So you still have to be able to make sure that you can explain how the AI arrived at those scores. And of course, finally, big claims require big evidence. So you need to have strong, valid research studies to show the AI is predictive, it doesn't increase bias, and it is better than humans. It's never better than humans, but it may reduce any of the mundane things for us. I don't believe personally that computers will ever be better than humans, but I'm a psychologist, so I'm biased. Some best practices. Now, I won't go through every one of these, but you can see some of these are really important. Like, you need to have the right data. You need to make sure that that there's transparency in the AI. I've just mentioned that. If you're using artificial intelligence, you need to know, how did it come to that score? How can I reverse engineer that so I can explain that to somebody if they ask why? They're going to ask why. They should. You should design it for fairness, validate it, incorporate, this is important for me, incorporate human oversight. Once you have the scores from the AI, once you have the decision from the system, the human should have oversight into that and should maybe combine it with other pieces of information. So humans should always have oversight into any decisions. I don't think anyone here would like it if you applied for a role, you didn't get the promotion, and it's because the computer said no and nobody else had any oversight into that decision. I'm not sure anyone here would like that. Oh, the PC told me I can't be promoted. I'm fine with that. Show of hands who would like that. Nobody. But it's very powerful information if used right. Now, what you can do is embed AI into things like asynchronous interviews. You can literally have people respond to interview questions, and the AI will score their responses against competencies. So this actually allows you then to widen the net, widen the amount of candidates you can actually assess, because the AI can help you assess more people, still as validly, more people, and allow you to have a wider talent pool. You can also then score people against things in terms of speech and recognition, or speech effectiveness against criteria, and even give you their international gradings about their speech and written communication levels. And the research shows the AI is just as effective as the SMEs, the subject matter experts, when giving those ratings. You can even check that people don't cheat using AI. Here's an example of a report from a proctoring report where someone has been doing an assessment and the computer's been keeping tabs on if that same person is the same person who finished the tests. Now you'll notice some little red flags. She changed her facial features at some points. It's so sensitive, if her facial shape changes even a little bit, it'll raise a red flag. So you can imagine if another person sits at the machine with them, it's going to say, hold on, there's something going on here. So you can even use AI to help reduce any faking good in the process. And this is so important that the UAE government has decided that they should be at the forefront of any of these processes, because let's be honest, the UAE is always the biggest and the best. I've been here 10 years, and I can see that. So they're at the forefront of this technology, and my organization has been engaging with the government here to create the world's first AI interview system in Arabic, in the local dialect. That's still ongoing. So I can't show you it yet. It's going to happen, inshallah. So there's going to be AI in Arabic. That's going to be quite useful, I think. We've also engaged with the government here in terms of the ethics and the values embedded in AI, how you use AI in the country. Because the previous speaker said the same thing. It's very important that you have regulation, because otherwise people will use things in the wrong way. So we've been engaging with the government in terms of building some best practices that should be used for when you're using AI in talent assessments. Okay, my final part. I know I'm getting to the point. I talk too much, I do know that. It's a feedback I've always had. This is important though. We've talked about assessments, we've talked about AI, we've talked about data. What do you use the data for? This is where people analytics really comes into its own, if you've used the right models and the right data. Because what you can do now, you can go from just operational reporting to actually predictive data and analytics, which can help you prescribe things to people. You can predict what's going to happen and prescribe what you should do to make sure those things happen more effectively, using data. So you can do that with all your talent models, provided the data is correct. So what can you do? You can identify your hypos using the data in your digitized system. So you can identify immediately your high potentials, your moderate potentials, people who need some extra help. You can deep dive into those people to see where they need the help in terms of their competencies, and you can even then deep dive into which types of development would be best suited to them. Using the technology, it's much better than manual processes because it's more timely, and it's actually a better engaging experience for the candidates too. So you can identify your high potentials. You can look at succession and look at experience as opposed to potential. Here's an example where you can identify people that would be considered for a certain role using the data and the experience data in the talent system to identify who's likely to be ready soon as opposed to who's likely to be ready with lots of development in the future. You might even want to recalibrate this data to consider them for different roles, because some people here may not be suited to a certain role. That doesn't mean you should discard the talent. They may be better suited to other roles. And if you have the right data in your system, you can look at whether they're likely to be better fit to other roles across the organization. So technology can help you not only with succession, but also with placing your people across the organization in the best way, not just in a succession pipeline, but laterally even. So you can be more sophisticated in how you manage your talent in the organization. You can even deep dive into individual people to see where they specifically need their development using the data at hand. And this is just using talent assessment data and using it in different ways. You don't have to assess people all the time. Once is quite enough. You can even give them their development in a mobile-enabled way. Most people would much prefer to have what they consider to be their development tips on the smartphone. So you can empower them to do their own development. You can empower them to take control of that development and talk to their managers, looking at their development, which is given to them automatically once they've done the assessments. And you can not only look at individuals, you can look across the organization. If you have the right data in place, you can compare between functions, departments, etc. So the same data can be used in such different ways. Technology allows you to do that, to get a real, to become much more competitive compared to other organizations in terms of your talent. You can benchmark yourself against external organizations because they will be using similar data to you. You can literally start comparing yourself to other organizations that need the same sorts of talent. Here's an example where an organization has achieved some competence in some competencies compared to their external competitors, but really have to develop their people in terms of other areas. I won't go through it in detail, but the concept of benchmarking, you need the good data, you need the right technology for that. Data reuse is going to be much more strategic. You assess people once, you use the same data again to see all these different insights. You use the data for succession. You use the data to look at whether they're high potential. You look at their data to see if they fit particular competencies that are very important in certain areas of the organization. So data reuse is going to be very important moving forwards. You don't ask people to be assessed every 10 minutes. You assess them once using good talent assessment processes, and you can use that same data again to strategically look at them in different ways. And so that's pretty much timed, I think. So basically, to finalize then, if you use good talent management frameworks and processes, and you embed them into the right technology and use the technology in the right way, you can review your talent more effectively, you can develop your people more effectively, and you can mobilize them around the organization more effectively too. That's the end. Thank you very much. And questions? Thank you.
My first question is, you mentioned that AI is going to play a vital role in your system. How can it measure the empathy, since the empathy, yes,
Okay.
and leadership is very vital now, and it's very worldwide known as one of the leadership skills.
Well, I mean, obviously that has AI, and the other speaker might help here as well, as there's an AI expert. AI has been seen to be able to measure specific behavioral aspects. Not just competencies, because it can measure competencies now based on how people behave, how they talk, how they respond to questions, but also facial features. The AI is now able to assess people's emotions based on facial features too. You've probably heard of that too. So I don't think that's going to be something you'll do very quickly, but empathy is a particular behavior. It's a certain competency. I call it working with people. Empathy is part of how you work effectively with people. So there are assessments at the moment that can measure that. Maybe not AI right now, not from our side anyway, but there definitely is a push for AI to be able to measure all these different types of soft skills, and it's becoming more efficient and effective all the time. So it can happen. Whether you want to use it, it's a different matter, but AI can measure those types of attributes.
So we can say like AI is not ready now for the empathy skill as well. Okay, my second question, regarding the AI as well.
Okay.
You've mentioned that data feeding and prior is very vital, right? So, and your system is like, we can say it's like a very advanced at the current moment. If I would change the concept of my talent acquisition and talent management to get all of them into the mobilized system, instead of having virtual assessment with the assessor.
Right.
So how can the system, with the AI, as you've mentioned, with all the aspects, with all of these groups, is going to help me to hire that kind of talent or retain him if he's like a current talent?
Well, let's look. I'm more of an expert in the assessment part of it, so let's go there. So obviously with any AI system, I'm not talking about ours, any AI system, as the other speakers already said, the data is king. So you need to tell the AI what it is that they're looking for. So the data needs to be quite rigorous, and you need to really, some AI systems, you give it a set amount of data and it uses that data. Other systems actually teaches itself over time.
Let's go with SHL solution and in succession plan. Let's say the goal is a succession plan for retaining the talents I have.
Yeah.
So how can I do that? If you go 2 slides back, you've mentioned that we can go with these aspects. How can the AI, yes, these ones. So how can the system, let's say, not the AI, the system, is going to replace the human interaction in having such a credible data?
Right. That's a good question. So AI is not going to replace humans to begin with. It's not going to replace humans. We're much more sophisticated. I don't think it'll ever happen. And if it does, we still need human oversight. Just joking aside, you don't want one like Arnold Schwarzenegger turn up at your door. I'm just joking, obviously. So this particular system, it uses talent assessments that may have used psychometrics or some sort of potentially AI, but at the moment not. It uses talent assessments to give it the data, to give you the macro dashboards to help you make a decision, but it's still the human making the decision. I don't know if anyone has an appetite for letting an AI system make the decision about who gets the job. I think the appetite is for the AI to give you the right type of data.
Exactly.
For you as a human to make the decision that this person gets the job. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't think, I'm not sure, what do you think? I don't think any organization is going to want to say to people, the computer decided you're not being promoted.
And that was our concern a few days ago with you.
Yes.
I'm sorry to take all the questions here.
No, please.
One more question though. Your test is very difficult when it goes to the expert level. This is what I heard as far as I know. So how could numeric, verbal, and the reasoning thing for the psychometric exam comes very difficult in terms of the expert level and then the advanced level? So I have the solution.
There's a solution to that one.
Yes.
There's now types of aptitude tests, for instance, that are computer adaptive. So it gives you a certain level of question. If you get that question right, it starts giving you harder questions to the point where it estimates the hardest question you can achieve. So it actually doesn't start hard, it starts easy and then moves to more difficult based on your responses. So it's called computer adaptive testing. Okay. So that means that if you are really good, it's going to give you harder questions, you're going to get them right. If you aren't very good, it's going to give you lower level questions and stay there. Okay. And then it gives the result based on how you did compared to a comparison group of people. So there are ways of getting around that. If you say it's too hard, I'm sure you didn't think it was too hard, right? It was a rumor for you.
Exactly.
Exactly. So, okay. So, but that's what
it's
we're
rumor.
doing.
It's rumor. Just I'm saying this. Okay, my last question is, what is the, from your experience, the results out of SHL assessments in general?
I'm not trying to sell my company here, I promise. So I didn't pay this lady.
Neither am I. Neither am I. I just wanted to know what is the percentage of accuracy or the percentage of credibility of the results? Oof. And thank you very much.
This is another presentation. Shall I start it now? Obviously, in the industry, there's accepted levels of reliability and validity for all 4 types of tests. So for instance, for ability tests, it needs to be reliable at 0.7. If you know about correlations, correlation of 1 is perfect, then 0.7 is a very high reliability, which means if you do the test once and you do it again, you're going to get the same score within a band of error. So it has to be reliable, it has to be valid, it has to predict performance. So you need to do validity studies to show that when someone's taken these tests, that their test scores link back to some sort of performance measure later. So you have to do those things. Even with the AI assessments, they're going to have to do those things to make sure that the AI is predictive too. And it has to have a certain level of reliability and validity. Does that answer the question?
Somehow.
I can send you lots of technical
manuals. Because you have the OPQ thing, and then you have the other psychometric...
which is, personality?
Yes.
Okay. Personality is very similar. You have to have a personality profile that measures what it says it's measuring. It also has to link back to the workplace. So our measures of personality are work-based. They look at traits linked to work behavior. And then based on validity studies we've conducted, we know how different behavioral traits link to particular types of competencies. And again, it's the same sort of thing, reliable and valid.
Going with the percentile. Thank you very much, Mr. David. This is Rayan Al-Hammadi from Dubai Municipality. Rayan Al-Hammadi from Dubai Municipality.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Pretty comprehensive questions. Anyone else got thinking of anything or? No? Well, if you've got any, of course, you can always drop me a line. You can always ask questions and we'll certainly come back to you. I can send you all the technical manuals if you really want to read all that stuff too. Okay. But thank you. Thanks very much.